Day 2, the first Ashes test at Brisbane, and this is Ask George. Oh, you're doing it, are you?
Yes.
For it. The Pie Chuckers podcast is asking, does anyone not in the England 11 become a better player by not playing in this game?
All of them. Yeah, absolutely. No doubt about it that Stuart Broad would have taken at least 11 wickets today. Forget the fact that he and Anderson played all 5 tests last time they were in Australia, and I think Broad took his wickets at 47 apiece. Forget that. He would have just cut through them. And who are the batters who would have scored loads of runs? I mean, Dom Sibley, he'd have probably smashed 100 yesterday. James Vince, how many tests has he played? 18 or so? Never scored 100, but he probably would have got a double yesterday. They're all miles better when they're not in the side.
That brings us on to Crick Analytics question, actually, which is 3 years and 19 batsmen later and still not James Vince. Why no criticism of selectors?
Well, I don't know that there are selectors anymore. I'm really surprised that someone said what, but I never criticise selectors. I used to call him Ed Myth. Anyway, James Vince, I thought, is talented, but it wasn't as if he didn't have quite a few tests. And he didn't ever score 100, did he? But yeah, I mean, it's not a ridiculous suggestion.
SOB is back on asking another question. His is pretty simple. 5-0?
Oh, SOB, I reckon Australia might win one. It would be hard to conclude anything else after the first 2 days we've had, wouldn't it? I mean, but we've seen huge turnarounds before. All sorts of things can happen. I reckon in 2010, England were absolutely thrashed at Perth, weren't they? And they went from there and were brilliant. So these things can happen. But yes, it wouldn't be the most shocking result.
The wonderfully named Angry Woke asks, did Australia miss a trick by not resting Smith and Labuschagne for Adelaide? I think he's being sarcastic.
It's one of those with the questions so much better than any answer I'm going to give.
Kiwi Callie asks, do you expect us to learn a new hashtag for Ask George?
Ask is an awful lot easier to spell than inquiries, no? On the bright side.
Does that mean we're dumbing you down, George?
Rightly. Coming down to my level. Absolutely right, yeah.
Ized asks, if Stokes can't bowl, what does England's 11 look like for the next match?
Well, he'll still play, won't he? I mean, judging from how exhausted the bowlers were looking, it's not the worst thing, is it? That they're going to have a slightly fresher attack. So you would think there is a chance that Broad and Anderson will come straight back in. But who knows? Because the treatment of Leach looked fit, but the treatment of Leach was verging on the barbaric. I mean, he was bullied. So I don't know. Let's worry about it in a day or two. On the bright side, they might get a day off.
England say...
Take the positives, yeah? Take the positives.
Take the positives. Well, England say Stokes didn't have a problem during play today. I mean, it didn't look like
they're admitting he's got a problem now.
They are. Okay.
They're just not telling us what it is, but it may be that there's more than one problem. All I would say is actually, I'm not sure the bowling is a big issue. I thought England's main seamers were admirable, terrific even at times. I thought Mark Wood could have had a couple of wickets. He rattled people with his pace. I thought Wokes was immaculate. I mean, maybe he could have pitched a bit fuller. Maybe he could have gone around the wicket, but he was tight. And Robinson was excellent.
Devda asks, do England have the bowlers to consistently take 20 wickets in Australian conditions?
Well, if only they had to take 20 wickets, they've got to take 25, haven't they? That's the problem. Because, yes, the bowlers are fine. I wouldn't criticise the bowlers, those 3 seamers in particular, at all. But, it's quite difficult when you haven't got slip catchers. You've got like seals in a slip who flap around at the ball. It's a real problem. You have to take more wickets and you've got to stay behind the line. I mean, England will moan about their misfortune, and there's a bit of misfortune in there, that's true. But ultimately, you've got to take some responsibility, and the length of cricket pitches hasn't changed. Just keep your feet behind the popping crease.
Well, Hassan asks, who was the last great England slip, and why aren't there more coming through?
Graham Swan was a player who was missed today. And again, just makes you realise how brilliant he was. He would have bowled, he would have gone, 2.5 and over. He might have threatened as well. and he was very good in the slips. Of all the brilliant players in that side, KP and whoever you want to talk about, I think the one that is missed the most is Graham Swan. He's the one that's been irreplaceable.
What is it about their preparations that's just not getting it? There's been a lot of chopping and changing, hasn't it, in that slip cordon over the course of the past 3 or 4 years?
Huge amount. And I mean, it was quite interesting today that David Milan was back in the slips for a bit. I mean, he did fine. But I don't think he wants to field in the slips. I don't think he fields in the slips very often. And England don't have a settled slip cordon, partly because of the selection issues they've had. They keep on dropping their top order players who stand there. So they haven't had time to settle. It's very difficult, very specialist. Ball moves fast, a lot of pressure, need to concentrate. It's a specialist skill, and they've been consistently poor at it for about 5 years now. It's not like any of this should be a surprise. I think they're rated, They're rated down the bottom of the major test playing nations with their slip catching, and have been for a while. The catch that Rory Burns put down today was, by the standards of Test cricket, I'm afraid, relatively simple.
Sincere Idiot asks, is the ECB powerful enough to make the Ashes a white ball event?
Well, it's going to be, you're going to have 2 pink balls, aren't they? Do you think that would help?
Do 2 pinks make a white, George? Is that what you're trying to say?
No, but it's not red. I mean, England have this sort of theory that the pink balls are leveller, and it might be. But look at their record with the pink ball. Since they beat the Windies at Edgbaston, look at their record, because I think they've been thrashed every time they've used it. The pink ball itself, I think, is quite a poor ball. I think it goes soft far too easily and doesn't swing enough. So I actually just think it can result in quite dull cricket, I'm afraid. But maybe during twilight, batters find the ball a little bit harder to pick up, and maybe there's a little bit of moisture sometimes from dew or something. So there's a bit of grip. But I'm not absolutely convinced by the bowlers who think they're going to get more out of the pink ball.
Jim Cottrell asks, SOS Parkinson?
Interesting. So the Lions are playing today, aren't they? And
he's not playing.
He wasn't picked, and nor was Crane. Interesting. So why would that be? Because they wouldn't want a leggy to possibly go and prove to be a bit expensive. What did Leach go for? Was it 95?
95.
It's brutal. 95 and 11 overs. The thing about Parkinson is, I would have said a year or so ago that it was nowhere near. It would be a huge challenge, no doubt. And I wouldn't rule out Mason Crane either, who's also with the Lions. I don't think they'd let anyone down. But Australia will attack them, and it's asking an awful lot. With all these things, I think we've got to be very careful about quick solutions like that, asking for sort of miracle selections to change things. Could Parkinson do well? Absolutely. Yep, he could. You're asking an awful lot, though. And I think that if you're picking Parkinson and expecting that because of that, England are suddenly going to be ahead in this series, I think that's naive to optimistic in the extreme.
Smith asks, can Jack Leach recover from this?
Yeah, he can. He definitely can, because it wasn't like he had a complete nightmare in terms of performance. The results are hideous, but I thought he bowled, okay. It's just they went after him and it came off. He's a tougher guy than, people sometimes think. He has come back from all sorts of adversity, not least really, really serious illness. So yeah, absolutely. I think he can. And actually, in the absence of Moeen, I think he's England's best spinner. I would have picked him for this game. I would have picked him for the tour. And I don't think he fell apart in the way that, say, Kerrigan did a few years ago. It wasn't like it was a series of full tosses and long hops. It's just, it maybe doesn't turn it enough. I mean, this is the problem throughout the team, really. I'm not sure that England are good enough. I mean, they might just be up against a team that's better than them.
And Inspire says, how did the match officials miss 14 no balls from Ben Stokes?
So the technology wasn't working. I mean, it's not that technical, is it, to set another camera up at each end on the line? Anyway, I mean, really, is that naive? Couldn't they have set another TV camera there and just not had one on Shane Warne? I don't know. And could they then, once they knew that it wasn't working, could they not have then said to the on-field umpires, in the old days, on-field umpires used to look at the front foot. But ultimately, I do think England have got to take some responsibility, and they keep on saying, "Oh, the umpire should have looked and stuff." They've got a mid on and mid off. Why can't they look?